So yesterday, Manuel Boza released this interesting little video where he and his friends set up a group blind date with a bunch of babes, and it pushed their dating skills to the limits and passed with the help of dating coach Iman, who actually made his own video, and he hired me to make the thumbnail. So initially he came in with this thumbnail and said, "Can you put me into this somehow?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So initially I was thinking like I could just slip him in the background or somewhere in the middle, or maybe like laying across the front. But then I was like, nah, none of those will look quite right, and it won't give him the emphasis that he deserves. So I started by just cutting Manuel out, and then I slipped Iman in beside him. If you guys want a more in-depth explanation of what's going on, feel free to join my Patreon, where every week I do 2-hour live streams where I hang out with you guys, answer your questions, and go through your channels. Now, a few of these calls I've only had one person show up for. That person gets me for as long as they want up until the 2-hour limit. So if you want to hire me for a 2-hour private consultation call, that'd cost you more than 20 times what you're paying for a 1-month Patreon membership. And in a 1-month Patreon membership, you get a minimum of 4 2-hour calls. Now, I don't want this Patreon membership getting out of hand, so I have it limited to 100 spots. So if you have any questions or you're interested in joining, the link is right down here in the description, and I look forward to seeing you this week. So now that we've photoshopped Iman to be embracing Manuel, we have to figure out how the women are going to be set around them. At first I was going to try to keep all the models so that half of them could be on the one side naturally, and then the other half could be shifted just a little bit over and be right around Iman as well. But I got kind of bored and I decided to just go back to working on the brows. So as you can see, Iman is tightly holding Manuel, and it doesn't look right. Something's missing. That's right, it's shadow. We need some shadow in here. I don't normally ask, but I've got a lot of projects that I'm working on, and you guys don't want to miss it. So please like and subscribe. It would help me out a ton. When I got in, I started to notice that, like, it's going to be really unbalanced. He's going to be way off to the side. It's just not really going to work. Since I had a bit of trouble placing the girls around them as a group, I decided to go back through the photos and see if there are any specific girls that I could cut out and put into our shot one by one. Before long, I noticed the expression and body language on this one girl. It seemed like she really wanted to be there and maybe even get closer to whoever was beside her. Before I even had the patience to cut her out, I flipped her over and set her next to Manuel, and it was a perfect fit. From this moment on, I knew this was going to be the center of our thumbnail. I just had to make some minor adjustments, make them all fit together with the lighting, the distortion, the pose, and then build a scene around them. So the pose that I went with for Manuel looks extra desperate with his hands up and just like concern in his eyes. Great pose, Manuel. Good job on those. It really gets the point across. But I just felt like maybe there was something that we could put between his hands. Maybe a Bible praying to God that he can get a girlfriend or something, but no, that just didn't really fit the vibe and it wouldn't pop. So I decided to put a red rose in the middle of his hands. So I just grabbed this off Envato Elements, link below. After I finished that, it was way past midnight, so I decided to call it a night, send my results to Iman and say like, hey, how's this looking so far? Iman was ecstatic. It felt really good to know that my client was happy. But he said like, what do you think about my face? And I'm like, I don't know, it looks good. But then he said like, what about this picture? Luckily the camera settings didn't change in the middle, so I could really easily just flip one out from the other. Just kind of blended in his shirt around him. So yeah, after I swapped Iman's heads, it not only looked better, but it was more symmetrical too. So the next step is to place them on their background. I didn't have one picked out yet, but since they were photographed on a bed in the first thumbnail, I figured they should still be on a bed in the second. I ended up settling on this romantic bedroom scene with a pinkish background. I just liked the color and the romantic vibe, and I feel like it could really pop amongst other thumbnails on the homepage. After that was all sorted out, I made Iman's shirt blue so he'd contrast from the background quite well. And then I played around with the tones of the background because I wanted the foreground to really pop. So I wanted the background to feel kind of dark and nighttimey, and then the foreground to be nice and bright. You have to make sure that it all fits together. So sometimes that means like adding reflections of light. If you're in a purple room, you're gonna have a little bit of purple along the edges. If it's nighttime, you're not gonna have like bright hair necessarily unless there's a light above you. So these are all things that I was trying to take into consideration as I was applying the final touches to this thumbnail. It always seems funny to me that the first half of your time gets you 90% of the way done, and then the second half only finishes that last 10. So it's kind of cool that it started out as a group photo with like a lot of people, but then we ended up narrowing it down to just 3 and just one babe. After giving it some thought and talking to some friends, Iman made the suggestion to blur out her face to add a little mystery to who won Manuel's heart. This is the kind of thing that I didn't really need to go into too much detail on. I could kind of just guess. So I gave him 4 options of how to blur out her face. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was fun. Hope to see you in the Patreon.